Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for September 26th through, oh gosh, I said September, August 26th through September 1st, 2024. Believe it or not, Mercury is going to turn direct in a couple of days. So who knows? Maybe I'll get the dates right. Maybe I'll get the dates wrong. But I know it's been a couple of weeks. Maybe you all missed me. But if you are watching live, as always, do say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. And then for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located in the rolling hills of Maryland at the moment. Normally in the New York City area. But yeah, every week we gather live, except for the last 2 weeks because I was on vacation. There's always this sort of ambitious side of myself where it's like, yeah, I can, I can do updates from the road. Yeah, so that was a little ambitious when you're traveling with other people and you're also driving across Italy. You're not going to stop and write horoscopes. You're gonna enjoy Italy. You're gonna drink wine. You're gonna go to vineyards. Well, at least if you're me, you're gonna do whatever you like to do. So yes, we had a little bit of a 2 week gap, but I'm back. I think over jet lag. But it's good to reconnect with you all. And, just to recap what's been going on with the astrology. So because I was gone for 2 weeks, we missed out on a little bit of August astrology. So sorry, Leo. But we did have some big deal transits. We had Mars conjunct Jupiter on August 14th. We had Mars squares Saturn on August 16th, and then I believe we had the Jupiter-Saturn square on the 19th, same day as that Aquarius full moon. And so it's just something to sort of keep in mind as we look at the astrology month by month, whether it's this year or any year. When you have Saturn aspects, Saturn wants things to take shape and to take form. So it's probably like we'll look back on August and we'll see that it was a formative month. Maybe things happen in your life. I realize August is typically time for people to take off. Perhaps it's a little bit more in the Northern Hemisphere, but it was certainly with a lot of Saturn energy. It is a turning point for the year for us. And with Jupiter and Saturn, these are some of the bigger planets in astrology. Both Jupiter and Saturn, they deal with the structure of our life. If Saturn is the structure in the sense of like the bones and the form, Jupiter helps us to put meaning and purpose, wisdom and knowledge into that structure and form. So for some people, it was an existential August, you're trying to sort of figure out, how do I build a life around the things that actually are important to me or in alignment with my values? Or maybe for some of you, with a lot of that Saturn energy, it marked personal milestones, achievements, and something that's really taking us into September. I realize we're not quite, we just touch on September this week. We'll look more at September as a whole when we talk next week. I realize it's a holiday for, next Monday for those of us in the United States. But that said, September brings us into a month that has our first eclipse. Yes, believe it or not, here we are. It's almost time for our next duo of eclipses. So we're going to have a lunar eclipse on September 17th, and we will have a solar eclipse on October 2nd. I know October seems very far away, but it's going to be here very quickly. And we're going to start to see that the eclipses can actually manifest and show their energy even in the weeks before the eclipse. So that said, we're still wrapping up August as I record this, but we actually have some other big deal things in the sky. Namely, we have Uranus turning retrograde. This will be on September 1st. Pluto, our friend Pluto, goes back into Capricorn for one last rodeo. It'll be a 2-month visit for Capricorn and then it leaves on November 19th. And for those that have been paying attention to their astrology, Pluto was in Capricorn from 2008, yes, you heard me correctly, all the way to just this past January of 2024. Pluto moves so slowly that we will not see Pluto in Capricorn at all in our lifetime again, because you would have to live another 248 years. And I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, I don't know, unless you're immortal, you're not going to live another 248 years. So I wanted to say that because the work that we've been doing with Pluto and Capricorn since 2008, especially what are called my cardinal signs, my Capricorns, my Libras, my Aries, my Cancers. This was on some level a huge time for you. I realize 16 years is a vast amount of time, but Pluto is what's called an evolutionary planet. And that sign, and you may be thinking, but Katie, I'm not a Capricorn, or I'm not even a cardinal sign. But Capricorn represents a certain part of your life because remember, you have a sun sign, you have a zodiac sign, but all 11 other signs are around you and they stand in for different parts of your life. It could be career, it could be family, it could be health, it could be relationships, for example. So that area of your life likely looks nothing like it did in 2008. If it still physically looks the same, then there's been some sort of potentially massive shift of consciousness in that area of your life over the last 16 years. So Pluto going back into Capricorn, we need to not sort of, oh yeah, it's the end. It really is, yes, the end, but it's sort of wrapping up a story that's been very present with all of us, like I said, the last 16 years. So when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, we will revisit what was this massive shift of consciousness, what was the personal work, what was sometimes the karma that needed to express itself over the last 16 years. So Pluto going back into Capricorn, that's on the 1st of September, Sunday, but we also have Uranus turning retrograde. So we got a bunch of things happening this week. We got Mercury turning direct on the 28th. That's correct. Yeah, the 28th of August. We have Venus going into Libra on August 29th. So we've got some changes in the sky. And then we have Uranus turning retrograde. Over the past 7 years, Uranus has turned retrograde in August, but just by the sort of nature of its orbit and its cycle, now we're going to start to see the retrograde in September for the next 7 years. So that's just sort of a side note, but like Pluto, Uranus is something called an evolutionary planet. Evolutionary planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, their job is to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. So along with Pluto, this is a week where there is an emphasis on evolution, a shift of consciousness, a need to become more aware of something, and sometimes that awareness starts within. Pluto is transformation, but it's also sometimes the uncomfortable look at power and control, the shadow side of ourselves, the part of ourselves that we all have, but sometimes we don't want to look at or even acknowledge. Also, Uranus is about awakenings, a shift of consciousness, somebody turning on the lights, so to speak. Sometimes Uranus can bring the energies of something unexpected, a surprise, that sense of awakening that comes because something's a shock. I'm not saying it's going to be a shock, of course not, but that's part of the archetype. It's the energy of Prometheus, and I realize that's a Greek myth, but in the Greek myth of Prometheus brings fire to humanity. So we can just sort of take something from that myth, and it says that Uranus brings light to something, and sometimes that's a shift of awareness that really illuminates something. So a lot of movements in the sky this week. I also mentioned that Mercury is turning direct, so it's been retrograde the past 3 weeks, but it's important to understand that Mercury is the ruler of Virgo season, so it holds the power of Virgo season, and so we're going to start to see the energy shift with Mercury direct. When a planet is retrograde, remember all planets turn retrograde except for the sun and the moon. It means it's a receptive energy. It is a reflective energy. We have to go back to the past. When a planet is direct, it is active. I just say this periodically because sometimes there's this mentality in modern astrology, certainly with social media, that retrogrades equal bad. If you stopped your life for every retrograde, you would not be moving much during the year. So we need the receptive, we need the yin, because if it's all yang, it is imbalanced. So we need that retrograde to give us a chance to go back, to reflect, to find new footing, find new choices, find new perspectives. So with Mercury turning direct this week, we'll be able to move forward, perhaps not as quickly, but what I've noticed when Mercury turns retrograde or direct, sometimes information comes to light. Sometimes it can be a little bit frenetic. Both Virgo and Gemini, and the moon is in Gemini presently. These are signs of thinking, learning, but also movement and exploration. So we've got a lot of things to say, a lot of things to think about this week. Maybe we are reflecting on our choices, and that starts to shift a little bit when Mercury turns direct on the 28th. We also have Venus going into Libra. That's the other planet that I referenced. Venus going into Libra actually is a little bit of a big deal. Normally, Venus goes into Libra every year, so it's that part is not a big deal, but because of what are called rulerships in astrology, trying to make this very simple, it shows where the energy moves. What planet receives the energy of an eclipse or an aspect. So right now, the south node of the moon, maybe you're thinking, what's the south node of the moon? There are these 2 points in the sky at all times. They're mathematical points. They're not physical bodies that make eclipses happen. So since the middle, I think it was July 2023, the south node of the moon and the north node of the moon, always exactly opposite, have been in the signs of Aries for the north node, Libra for the south node. And that tells me as an astrologer, that the eclipses will be in Aries and Libra. So because we are creeping up on Libra season, I know we just started Virgo, but when the sun goes into Libra, I think it's September 23rd, we begin Libra season, and then we will have a Libra new moon on October 2nd. This will be a solar eclipse, and it is the solar eclipse that ties together with the Aries solar eclipse that we had on April 8th. So what I'm trying to say is that eclipses have been happening in these 2 signs, Aries and Libra, because the nodes are there. And the nodes are like the compass for the sky. They are the axis of fate. South node, it's like a well of memory and instinct. It's where we find our patterns. Sometimes people will come into our life just because we need to work out something. Sometimes even people leave our life around the energy of the south node. Sometimes with the north node as well, but the north node represents an area that collectively we are working towards. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that. That might be a little bit simplistic to say it that way. But generally we are reaching towards Aries. Aries is action, Aries is forward movement, but this is why I said sometimes it's a little bit more complicated, but Aries is also war. It's aggression. That's just the shadow side of Aries, just like the shadow side of Libra is being overly pleasing, not being able to stand up for your own wants, your own needs, and your own desires. That's a lot to say to go back to Venus going into Libra, because when Venus goes into Libra on the 29th, Thursday, it activates the energy of the south node by what's called rulership. And it activates the energy of an eclipse that hasn't even happened yet. So, for example, the eclipse on October 2nd will be at 10 degrees of Libra. That's because the new moon is within a certain amount of degree of that south node, so it's going to be an eclipse. And Venus will reach that degree around the 6th or 7th of September, so about a week from now. So it may mean that as we're going into September, we are seeing the eclipse in advance of the eclipse. I know it sounds crazy, but that's just sort of time is not flat. It's a spiral, and these are the moments where the doors of fate can open and close. Much like I was discussing back in July, because July, late June and July tied together the solar eclipse of April 8th and the solar eclipse to come on October 2nd. So we also could have seen eclipse energy in July, or a preview of September, October in July. So that's your little fun look at eclipses. And I will even go back to Uranus for a moment, because it is turning retrograde at 27 degrees of Taurus. So if, for example, if you're born near the end of Taurus, you're really experiencing this energy of awakenings and transformations. But believe it or not, we're actually getting to the end of Uranus's time in Taurus, because next year, Uranus will actually make its first dip into Gemini in July of 2025, I almost said 2026, July of 2025. So it's kind of crazy, because I've been talking about Uranus and Taurus, way back in 2018. I wasn't doing this in 2018, but I did start doing this in June of 2019. So that would have been a couple months after Uranus went back into Taurus. So this is, me talking to you and doing this live actually has been with Uranus and Taurus. So we've, this is all in advance of, this is a much bigger conversation. We got quite a few big planetary changes in 2025. So the winds are going to begin to shift later this year as we go into the new year. But like I said, there's a much bigger conversation. I'll save a lot of that conversation for my Astrology of 2025 webinar, to be announced much later this year. So that is your look at this week. Kind of give you a few pointers on the horizon, and for my mutable signs are my Geminis, my Virgos, my Sagittariuses, my Pisces. How are you doing? Because you've had some big deal energy in your sign, and all of this is in advance of a lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 17th. It's going to really, and I was saying this even in the video that I pre-recorded for the last 2 weeks, the second half of the year has very different energy than the first half of the year, the first half of 2024. And it just means that it's like a shift of, what's the analogy I'm looking for? Like a little bit of like the tectonic plates are starting to shift the floor, the anchor point is beginning to shift in a different direction. So, you'll have to let me know if you are watching live, or even if you're not watching live, because I also do this, I post this on Spotify and YouTube as well. So let's look at the astrology of each of the 12 zodiac signs. We can see where Pluto is returning to the Capricorn part of your life, where Uranus is being activated, and how we are looking ahead towards the eclipses in September and October. So, starting with Aries. Aries, Mars is your planet, and it's coming to the end of Gemini. It's actually going to go into Cancer early next week. I think it's the 4th of September. Yes, it's the 4th of September. So when it goes into Cancer, it's a shift in the energy. It points you towards a sign that represents home and family for you. So for a lot of you, quite simply, September, October, and even into the beginning of November is a time to focus on your roots, your home base, home and family, your household, and your living situation. Mars is typically not a quiet energy, so you may see Mars coincide with a move or a change in the household, or even quite simply, you want to make changes in your living situation, you want to clean things out, or maybe you're just feeling a little bit homebodied. But that's where a lot of the energy is going to focus. And Mars will be in Cancer during the eclipses, especially that October 2nd eclipse. I realize it's not October yet, but we are a month away, just a little over a month away from that October 2nd eclipse. And that eclipse will be in Libra, and Libra is your sign of relationships. So whether that's how you interact and socialize and connect with people, or perhaps you are in a relationship. Relationships come in a lot of different forms, but primarily the major relationships in your life. This eclipse on October 2nd connects to the eclipse of April 8th. It connects to the eclipse of October 14th. It even connects to that first eclipse that we had in Aries in April 20th of 2023. This has been a dynamic time in your life, Aries. Dynamic means different things to different people, but typically dynamic coincides with major events and turning points. Oh, who's calling the landline right now? Turning points in your life. So with Mars and Cancer during September and October, see what is the story around the home environment, your living situation, for example. Then there's Pluto, and Pluto is going back to what's called your 10th sign. So Capricorn is what is called the highest sign in your personal astrology. It represents career, your public life, your public reputation, the role that you play in the world, the sense of duty and responsibility, and even like the direction you want to take your life. So Pluto going back into Capricorn is a revisit of a story that began in 2008. I know that's a huge amount of time, but there has been a personal evolution that is, and I say personal because it's very particular to your life, your soul's journey, and the work that you've needed to do around power, control, your professional life, being able to have control. I mean, that's a thing. I've seen very different things for different clients that are Aries or Aries rising. And for some of you, you've dealt with toxic bosses. Maybe you've been in a toxic work situation, or maybe you've really had to build and to find your power in your career. It's always not necessarily a negative thing. So it's for you to find the story, again, that's unique to your life, because Pluto in Capricorn is the grand finale. It is a wrap up of the karmic lessons and the soul evolution that you've been working on around power, duty, and responsibility over the last 16 years. And so the question is, what did you learn? Taurus. So Venus is your planet. So Venus is wrapping up its time in Virgo. This week it is making an opposition to Neptune that can make for a very dreamy, glamorous, and alluring, and even open-hearted energy as you go into the midweek. But for you, Taurus, Venus will go into Libra, and I gotta do my astrology math, and Libra is your 6th sign. So we are moving away from a sign that's focused on identity, self-expression, who are you, how do you make space for the things that light you up and give you joy, and into a sign that talks about your day-to-day life. What does that mean? It says that going into October, is that right? Or maybe it's the end of September. Going into the end of September, you need to focus on your day-to-day life. You need to get organized. You need to look at your schedule. You need to reorganize, and even look at health and wellness. Venus going into Libra also activates the energy of the eclipses. Now, you had an eclipse in Libra in October of 2023, so almost a year ago. And then it's kind of playing off the eclipse that we had on April 8th of 2024. So it's for you, Taurus, to sort of see what's the story with health, wellness. Maybe health is fine. Great. Fantastic. Maybe you want to make personal changes, positive changes in health and wellness. Maybe you're just looking at your day-to-day life and saying, you know what, this isn't sustainable. I need to do this differently. I need to reprioritize my time, reorganize my time. Maybe for some of you, it's like, I need to stop doing this. I need to start doing more of this. But something about the day-to-day life wants to shift and change. It could be a change in priorities. And you may see those changes that are being heralded by the eclipse of October 2nd in September, in late August and September. So that's for you to see what that means in your life. Then there's Uranus. And Uranus has been in your sign since 2018, 2019. I know we've had many conversations about Uranus and Taurus at this point. hopefully I'm not beating a dead horse, so to speak, but Uranus has been an evolutionary force in your sign. It says that the version of who you were 5, 6, almost 7 years ago, is that really you? Maybe you've had to make big changes. Maybe something has shifted, something has moved. Of course, every Taurus is different, but typically Taurus likes to hold the line, so to speak. You are a fixed sign. So that's why Uranus, for some Tauruses or Taurus risings, has been a disruptive influence. At the core of this disruptive influence or this energy is a need to evolve. And so this is for you to reflect on, Taurus, this week, especially as Uranus turns retrograde on September 1st, is where is there still this push to evolve, to grow, to get closer to who you are versus, let's say, the expectation of who you should be, or even how the past has shaped and molded who you are. It could be a week of awakenings. It could be a week of breakthroughs. It could be shifts, and for some of you, even a few earthquakes and rumbles, so to speak. Pluto going back into Capricorn doesn't have the same dynamic effect as it does with some of the other signs, but it is wrapping up a time since 2008 that's been very focused either on faith, truth, meaning, philosophy. The thing about the ninth sign, this is the case for any sign, but just happens to be that Capricorn is your ninth sign, is that it helps us to open up to the world, to make our world bigger, to open up our eyes. And for some people, that's going to college or university, that's reading every book that you can get your hand on, or maybe that's getting into philosophy or even spirituality over the last 10, 15 years. So the question for you, Taurus, for you to reflect on is like, how did you see the world? How big was your world? What did you believe in? What did you stand for in 2008 versus what do you believe in and what do you stand for right now? Perhaps it's very different. Keep in mind, Taurus, is that Pluto is leaving Aquarius. Aquarius is your career sign, is your 10th sign, and it's going back to Capricorn, but it will go back into Aquarius on November 19th. And that's important, and we've talked a little bit about this already, because Aquarius is a major sign in your personal astrology. It's one of your 4 directions. It's your professional life, your public reputation, and this huge force of personal evolution and consciousness and transformation. Pluto is going to start to move through this space, it already has since 2023 and earlier this year, over the next 20 years. And I realize that's a huge amount of time to really even wrap our heads around, like, we're going to be like robots in 20 years, but you are at the beginning of a major shift, whether that's in your professional life, your public reputation, your ambition, the role that you want to play in the world. And perhaps it's a little soon to see what it is, maybe not, but it's for you to start to see where those shift points in your professional life, etc., is starting to take shape and to take form. Gemini, lots of stuff going on in your sign the past couple of weeks. How are you doing, Gemini? I know your planet Mercury has been retrograde. That's not a bad thing, but you've needed August to reflect, to go back, to look within, to consult your intuition, and to get into these bigger questions around how do you speak? How do you listen? How do you communicate? How do you learn? We all have blind spots, and that's the thing about a retrograde, is that if we were always moving, straight on, fast and forward, it would just be instinctual. We wouldn't have had a chance to really reflect and to take things in. So there's that, but then what I was referring to in August, and especially a couple of weeks ago, is that Mars is in your sign, although only until September 4th. Jupiter is in your sign, Gemini, and we've been having squares to Saturn. So there's something about August 2024, which is an important month in the astrology of this year for you. Saturn is in something called your career sign. It's both career, it's your ambitions, it's your public profile, your public reputation. And it says that August of 2024, it needs to be this like structural point in your personal year. where you're trying to build something, you're trying to step into a new role, you're trying to reevaluate, you're trying to reorganize. Perhaps you're in the middle of it. It's hard to see what it's becoming, but with Saturn in your sign, a lot's being asked of you right now, Gemini. You need to step up into something. And then of course this isn't you, but with Saturn in the 10th, it's like everything has to be completely above board. Like I said, of course it's not you. This is a time to build your career. For some Geminis, it's a time to completely restructure the career. And for some Geminis, it's for you to start to figure out, what do you want to be when you grow up? So that said, going back to Mercury, your planet, it will get back to Virgo. I think it's middle of September, and maybe see where things are at the second half of September. But with Mercury going back into Virgo, which is your sign of home and family, your living situation, this is all right up to our first eclipse of the season. This will actually be a lunar eclipse in Pisces, the first eclipse in Pisces that will take us into 2026. I know, 2026. And this is going to put a spotlight on your career. And it's quite possible that you're seeing the changes and shifts and movements already, but this is a big deal eclipse for you. And it's sort of highlighting these bigger shifts and changes in career and your public life and the role that you play in the world. So it's maybe a lot's happening in your life right now. I don't know. Maybe you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, Katie, but let me know, how are you doing, Gemini? Turn this down. There we go. It's better. Cancer. Cancer, the moon is your planet. So as we start the week, it's actually in the sign of Gemini. So Gemini represents something called your 12th. The beginning of this week, even though Gemini is typically about movement and exploration and busyness, but actually for you, Gemini represents what's called your 12th. It's time to reflect, to rest, to go within, and maybe to use that Gemini energy to consult your intuition, for example, to listen to your dreams, to see what your higher self or even the universe is trying to tell you right now. Maybe you want to pull a tarot card, maybe you want to meditate, for example. Around the middle of this week, so on the 28th, the moon will go into Cancer, and that's the time of renewal and new beginnings that you get each month when the moon goes into your sign. Sometimes when the moon is in your sign, you can be a little bit wistful or emotional, but that's just, everybody's different, of course. Let's go to some of the bigger changes of this week. We have Pluto going back into Capricorn. That's actually a big deal for you, Cancer. And then we do have Uranus turning retrograde, which is not as big deal, but let's start with Pluto. Pluto is going back into Capricorn, which is your relationship sign. Pluto first went into Capricorn way back in January of 2008. I'm depending on how old you are, maybe you were in high school or maybe you were much older, but that started a 16-year chapter where you've needed to do a lot of deep psychic, evolutionary, and even karmic work on relationships and connections. Every Cancer is different. Every soul is different. And so it's for you to see what has been the story around relationship and connection over the last decade plus. Relationships come in a lot of different forms. So maybe you felt this energy, not necessarily in a relationship, but the people that are coming in and out of your life. Sometimes Pluto can show themes around power and control, and even dominance in relationships. I'm not saying this is the case for every Cancer, but there's been this need to really make some big changes, to face something, face yourself, maybe even to look at relationship dynamics and to evolve them. That's the thing about Pluto. Pluto gives us the ability to completely wipe something out and start over, and also to grow and evolve our consciousness. Pluto will only be back in this space for 2 more months. This will be from September 1st until November 19th. So that's it for the rest of your life. I know it's a big statement to say, but Pluto takes 248 years to go around the sun. So 2008 to 2023 and 4 was the time that your soul needed to do this work. So it begs the question that doesn't have an answer at the moment. What have you learned? How have you grown and evolved? How has your consciousness around relationship and connection grown and evolved over the past 10, even 5, 10, 15, 16 years. Uranus turning retrograde does activate a story. God, I gotta do my astrology math. Where's Taurus? Taurus for 11. Around connection, socialization, but also groups and friends and community that has been present over the last 6, 7 years. You needed to change something to awaken, to grow and evolve, and to shift your consciousness around your role in the world. We all belong somewhere. We all need to find our place, whether it's our tribe, our people. And maybe you've seen changes in friendships and groups over the past 3, 4, 5 years. Certainly the past few years have been very interesting, but it's for you to find the thread of where you've needed to awaken to something and transform how you do friendships and community, because that story is beginning to wrap up in 2025 and 6. Leo. Happy birthday, Leo. I know that we are getting... Wait, no, it's not. Happy belated birthday. My brain is still on vacation. It's still somewhere in Italy having pasta and Aperol Spritz. But happy belated birthday, Leo. I know the sun is no longer in your sign, but, we can go back and enjoy. So, with you, let's look to some of the bigger changes that have been happening. With the sun now in Virgo, this is the time, this is the season, your personal calendar, to focus on your material needs, material stability, and security. With the bigger shifts this week, we do have Pluto going back into Capricorn. I do want to highlight, Leo, because Pluto, since the end of January 2024, has been in your 7th sign of relationship. Pluto first went into this space from March to June of 2023. It returned in January 2024. Pluto will come back to Aquarius on November 19th of 2024. Well, it'll be there for 20 years. I know that's a big statement, but Leo, and I think I've even talked about this a little bit already. You are in a shift of seasons. A shift, and I don't mean like season as in like we're going from summer to autumn within a month. I mean like a shift in the season of your life. And it begins this work on relationships. Relationships come in a lot of different forms. It's how you connect and interact and socialize with people. Perhaps you are in a relationship, perhaps you are in a partnership or a marriage, maybe you're not, but there is some sort of deeper personal work that has begun since last year. So I wanted to say that because Pluto leaves this space. Again, it will come back in November, but Pluto goes back to a space that it spent the last 15, 16 years in, which is the space, Capricorn for you, is something called your sign of health and wellness. Of course, Leo is different. It's for you to find the thread, the story that is personal to you. In January of 2008, yes, 2008, Pluto went into your 6th sign, and it said that something about your relationship with your body, your health and wellness, how you take care of yourself, and even like the operations of your life have to change. Pluto is a have-to planet. It's non-negotiable. For some of you, perhaps that is health. Maybe you look different in 2008. Maybe you took care of yourself differently. Maybe you've made positive changes in your health and wellness since 2008. But everybody's different. And then Pluto going to this space, something has needed to evolve. The consciousness of your relationship with your body has needed to evolve. I realize that's a bit of a broad statement because, again, you have to really reflect and to see where has Pluto been present in your life over the last 15, 16 years. If it's not health and wellness, maybe your relationship with work has changed. Maybe you've gone from being a workaholic to realizing that you need to find a different relationship with work, put things in balance. Maybe it's being more grounded. For some Leos, you've sort of been floating through life, and Pluto is like, we gotta work on this. We gotta make a change. We have to be rooted and grounded. We need to be very present in the day-to-day details of life. We can't escape. So again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your life. Uranus, however, turning retrograde also on the 1st of September with Pluto, it's a bit of a different story because it's activating a major sign in your personal astrology. It's activating your 10th sign of career. I know that I've gotten a little bit of feedback from Leos, like, well, I'm not like, I don't have a career, or I'm retired. Like, how is this relevant for me? That's the thing. We have to find where. It doesn't mean that, just because you don't have a traditional career or you're not in the workforce, that you're not experiencing it. It's happening, but it's happening in a way that's relevant to your life and your soul's journey. The 10th in general represents our worldly life, meaning the role that we play in the world, even if our world is teeny tiny, the duties and the responsibilities that we carry, and even this force that we all go through in life that really pushes us either to grow up or to mature or to become a better version of ourselves. Of course, everybody is different. And for some of you, it really is about career. Maybe you were in a different career, field in 2018-19, and maybe it's very different now. Maybe you've been thinking about making a radical change. Maybe it's not that. Maybe you're just trying to break out in the world and to really get seen and noticed. But it's for you to see what the evolutionary story is for your life. So it's a little bit of a spicy week for you. Uranus is a spicy planet. It can really shake things up, but it's trying to get you to be authentic to yourself, authentic to who you are by any means possible. Virgo, happy birthday, Virgo. I was like, happy birthday, Leo, and I realized the sun is in Virgo. So yes, I know I was off 2 weeks, but the sun is in Virgo, so it is your birthday season. So how are you doing, Virgo? Your planet Mercury has been retrograde for the past few weeks. Mercury, I think, it was like around the middle of August. Sorry, my brain was in the middle of August. I was somewhere eating pasta and driving through Italy. But in the middle of August, Mercury went back into Leo. And Leo for you represents your 12. There are 12 signs in the zodiac, and so each of the zodiac signs represents a different part of your life. But the 12th is like the part of our life that we can't see. It's when we dream, we're kind of in the in-between space. It's our spirituality. It's our search for truth and meaning on a much deeper level. But it also means that you've been a little bit behind the scenes, perhaps a little bit hidden, perhaps a little bit internal, reflective, or even going through something existential over the past couple of weeks. Mercury turning direct still means that there's a part of your life that's operating more behind the scenes than in a place that you can see it. Maybe you are feeling a little bit lower on energy, you need to rest, or maybe you just need to meditate more, for example. When Mercury does get back into Virgo, this will be on the 9th of September. That's when you kind of get that symbolic new beginning. It kind of refreshes and restarts your personal year. We will have a Virgo new moon next week. This will be September 2nd. So we'll talk about this next week. And that is like the reset for the year. But then we got to get to the 9th for Mercury to sort of really get things moving. So use the time between now and the new moon and the 9th when Mercury goes into Virgo to dream, to vision, to conceptualize, because when Mercury crosses into Virgo on the 9th, that's when something wants to become real, wants to become tangible. When Mercury goes back into Virgo, Mercury starts to activate the energies of Saturn. So it's a little bit of a different vibe mid-September. Saturn energy is more like, got to get our stuff together. We got to make some serious decisions. Saturn is also putting an emphasis on relationships and other people at the moment. But in the meantime, Venus is in your sign. Enjoy Venus. Enjoy the beauty and the pleasure. Can I stop hitting this mic? Beauty and pleasure of life at the moment. The other big deal changes this week are Pluto going back into Capricorn on September 1st, and then Uranus turning retrograde also in September 1st. Capricorn and Taurus are not they're not really hitting these major points in your personal astrology. They are fellow earth signs. Virgo is an earth sign, Taurus, Capricorn, also earth signs. So there's going to be this activation as you go into September about your earthly life, money, material needs, material security, what's of value, what's of worth. That's what earth energy is all about. It's very practical and grounding energy as well. Pluto going back into Capricorn revisits a nearly 2-decade story. So January of 2008 was when Pluto first went into Capricorn and began the story of really needing to evolve your consciousness, evolve something around identity and self. So how did you express who you are 15 years ago versus how do you express who you are now? Pluto is a clear everything away and start over type of planet for some Virgos, not always. It's also a need to look at oneself, to look in the mirror. It is a powerful and dynamic force of evolution and transformation. And it's for you, Virgo, to find the story and to find the thread. And maybe you've needed to take yourself and take your talent seriously over the past decade. Maybe you've needed to really fight for who you are, to strip away the things that you're not. And maybe it's been a creative force for you. You've felt your creative energy come more and more into your life. But again, it's for you to see what is the story in your life. Uranus turning retrograde. It's turning retrograde in something called your ninth. We've talked a little bit about this over the past months and perhaps even the past couple of years. But Uranus is in a sign that represents how you see the world, how you see your place in the world. I realize that sounds a little bit vague because it's not a concrete space. Virgo is so concrete, so literal sometimes. But it's for you to understand that the past 6 years, almost 7 years, has been a time to make your world bigger, to illuminate something, to re-examine and transform, perhaps even to awaken matters of faith, philosophy, truth, and meaning. For some Virgos, especially those that write, speak, teach, communicate, it's a need to put your voice out there and to broadcast your ideas in very new and different ways. Perhaps Uranus has been a visionary for you. Perhaps it's shook your world and maybe made it bigger in a way that can sometimes be confrontational. But again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your own life. Libra. So Venus is your planet and it's wrapping up its time in Virgo this week, and it goes into Libra. Hey, that's your sign on the 29th of August. So Venus has been in Virgo probably the last 3 weeks. I can't remember what date, but this has been a time for you to go behind the scenes. Things are not quite taking, they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not happening. It's not to say nothing's happening in your life, but maybe there's a sense of like liminality, or there's a pause, or maybe you don't have the energy to really take action at the moment because maybe it's not time for you to take action. Venus going into Libra on the 29th, that's a different state of energy because Libra represents, whether you are a Libra sun or a Libra rising, it represents your first. The first is the energy of new beginnings. The 12th, which is where Venus is presently, because Virgo is your 12th sign, represents endings, transitions, a need to make meaning, to search for a purpose, and to sort of put together the bigger picture after let's say the year that you've had. We've talked about this before, Libra, but you've been having eclipses in your sign, Libra, but also Aries, your relationship sign, over the past, year and a half. And it has been a dynamic time to be a Libra or Libra rising. Dynamic time typically coincides with major life milestones. At this point, you should know what I'm talking about because the eclipse in Libra, hey, you're a Libra, but there will be one more eclipse in Libra on, October 2nd. And that's beginning to wrap up a story that began in I was going to say the spring, but that's, some of you in Australia, but in April of 2023. The new, especially for those that are born in the earlier part of Libra, so these are my late September babies, my very early October babies, especially if you were October 2nd, plus or minus a couple of days, it's a time of new beginnings. It's a time of transition. Because remember, the first, as you know, because Libra is your first, represents rebirth. It's like the energies of spring. Doesn't, you know, that's just as a metaphor, as an archetype. And so it's about to be spring again, a renewal in your life. But with a change of seasons means that new things are coming into your life. Venus going into Libra on the 29th brings the energy in advance of that eclipse that we have to wait another month to experience. So you may see new beginnings and dynamic changes in September. You'll have to get back to me. Libra. Then there's the other two big changes this week. Pluto going back into Capricorn is the bigger deal compared to, let's say, Uranus and Taurus. I will say Uranus and Taurus over the last 6 years, and this is going to be different for every Libra or Libra rising. There's been this time, you know, because Taurus is something called your eighth, and the eighth in astrology represents the space where we need to face ourselves. And I know you're like, I don't want to face myself, but that's the thing. As human beings, we need to face ourselves. We need to grow and evolve. We can't do that unless we face ourselves or we look at ourselves. So Uranus as an evolutionary force has meant that the last 5, 6, even 7 years, you've needed to bring this force of evolution to a space that can sometimes be a little tender, a little uncomfortable. It's about vulnerability. It's about opening up and sometimes even opening your eyes to parts of yourselves that you didn't even know was there. So see what the story is this week and even going into next week. Is like what wants to reveal itself, what has been hidden within, or something around the self or the deep self that you haven't quite fully looked at. But again, every Libra is different. Then there's Pluto into Capricorn. Now, Pluto is returning to Capricorn for just 2 more months because you would have to live another 248 years. Yes, you heard me correctly, for Pluto to come back to what's called your 4th sign. The 4th sign is the base and foundation of anybody's chart. It just happens to be Capricorn in Libra's astrology. And in January of 2008, Pluto went into this space for the first time in your life. And it's as if Pluto said, hey, Libra, it's time to tear everything out. And I know that's a big statement, but that's kind of what Pluto does. Pluto clears so that something else can come into space. There can be putting new energies and new emotional structures into the space. And maybe your relationship with family and home, and even your relationship within yourself to these topics. Perhaps there's been a huge evolution of consciousness over the last 10 and 15 years. There were times it wasn't easy to be a Libra, especially, let's say 2018, 2019, 2020, even with the Uranus, Pluto squares, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. And it really kind of was trying to create these evolutionary waves or in a space that's about holding up your life. So for some Libras, you've had big themes or big experiences around home and family. For some Libras, you've moved, but that move has been deeply symbolic. For some Libras, everything looks the same externally. It's just the internal evolution of consciousness that has happened. So see what's coming up as Pluto returns, because this is like the grand finale. It's the last few things in order for you to tie up, hopefully with a very pretty bow, the deep work that has needed to happen, because this is this time that your soul has needed to do this evolutionary work. Scorpio, so Mars is your planet, and this week Mars is beginning to come to the end of Gemini, and I think it's on the 4th of September, that Mars, your planet, will move to Cancer. Gemini for you represents something called your 8th sign. And we've been talking about this probably for the past 3, 4, maybe even 5 weeks, is that when any planet goes into the 8th, especially if it's a major planet like Mars, it's a need to look within. A lot of deeper emotional stuff comes up. Maybe you're dealing with themes about intimacy and vulnerability, the secrets that we all carry, so maybe even the things that we can't even see. It's deep in the psyche, deep in the unconscious. Maybe it's around power, control, sexuality, money, income, wealth, finance, debt. It's going to be different, of course, for every Scorpio. So Mars is wrapping up its time there. Maybe it's like, what have you learned since, goodness, I think it was like the 20th of July that Mars went into Gemini. I can't remember. Sorry, my brain's still eating pasta in Italy right now. But Mars going to Cancer is a personal shift. It says that over the next 5-6 weeks, it's time to focus on the energies of, it's kind of ironic because it is home and family. Cancer is a very sensitive sign. It sort of reflects upon the past. But Mars is also going into your 9th sign. Foreign travel, exploration, journeys, the search, the quest, the search for wisdom and knowledge, the search for truth and meaning. Mars also sometimes has a lot to say, a lot to share, a lot to teach, perhaps even opinions when it's in this part of the chart. And that's where Scorpio can be a very strong advocate for anything that it believes in. There's that. We do have Pluto going back into Capricorn. Capricorn represents something called your third sign, and the third sign is a sign of voice, communication, and how you think and listen and learn. Look back, Scorpio. What was your relationship with your voice in January of 2008? I know that's a long time ago. Maybe you're much younger, but this has been a 15-year process of excavating your voice. And voice comes in a lot of different forms. It's not just the words out of my mouth, although I can say on a personal level, because I'm a Scorpio, that there would have been no way I could have done this in 2008. It's not a technological statement. It's that I did not have my voice. And maybe I'm still working to find my voice, for example. But it's, Pluto is about power. It's about not just removing anything that's in the way of using your voice, but also really understanding and taking consciousness and evolving how you use your voice, how you think, and how you listen, and how you learn. And Pluto showing up in 2008 is the equivalency of calling the plumbers, and Pluto saying, hey, Scorpio, I see you got a clog in your voice. So here we are, 15, 16 years later. What has shifted? What has changed? Because Pluto going back into this space wraps up a story that you will not return to, at least on this level, for your life, because you would have to live another 248 years, Scorpio. And I know sometimes you think you're immortal and you'll outlive everybody, including your enemies, but this is the only time in your life that Pluto will be in this space, which means that this was the time that your soul needed to do this work. Another thing to keep in mind, and I've spoken about this a few times at this point, but Pluto will go back into Aquarius. So Pluto's in Aquarius right now. It goes backwards because it's retrograde into Capricorn, and then it will turn direct in October. And then on November 19th, it goes back into Aquarius. It's for you to understand, even though this might not fully make sense yet because, Pluto moves so slowly, is that you, Scorpio, are in a shift of eras, a shift of seasons. I don't mean, going from spring to summer or summer to fall seasons. I mean a shift in the seasons of your life. You are shifting into a time where you are doing a lot of deep work on home and family roots foundation. You've already seen the first few forays of this story, but you will begin to return to it starting November and into the new year. Then there's Uranus. And Uranus is the big deal because Uranus is in your relationship sign. And it's for you to look back at relationships as they were in 2018, 2019. And there is a literalness to that statement. Maybe you were married, maybe you were in a serious relationship and you're not, maybe you were single and now you're the opposite. But relationships is, how do you connect and how do you interact and how do you socialize? Because Scorpio, typically, you got to go through the gate, you got to go through the guard tower, you got to go through the retina scan, you got to go through the bouncer in order to get in. Because Scorpio really holds the people sometimes at length. So there's been this deep work of really opening up, and perhaps you've seen that within the confines of your relationships, your primary relationship. And maybe this is about really becoming more open, more vulnerable, and really changing how you interact and socialize with people. Uranus turning retrograde brings the story to the forefront. It's been with you since 2018, 2019, but do keep in mind, Scorpio, is that Uranus will leave this space, although temporarily in 2025. It comes back and you are wrapping up this big psychic evolutionary work on relationships that you've been doing since 2018, 2019 by April of 2026. Sagittarius, how are you doing? I know that I've mentioned this periodically, but Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter, as you know, it's been in Gemini since the end of May of 2024. So just, gosh, what was that? Not 6 months ago, but you can do the math. A few months ago, May 2024 just feels like a lifetime ago. I don't know how you're feeling, but my point is that it's a very different time for you, because really astrology is just time. It's the time of your life and how your life potentially unfolds. Of course, we're all different people. This is a time for relationship connection. It is not a time to isolate. For example, it is more about other people than it is for you. Jupiter has been sharing the same space as Mars. You did have the Jupiter-Mars conjunction. This would have been like August 14th. You know, what was happening with relationships around that time. Jupiter won't leave this space until May of 2025, but Mars will leave next week. And Mars can be a little bit of a pointed influence when it's in this space. Perhaps our interactions with people are a little bit pointed, a little bit spicy, or we just feel really motivated to connect and interact and socialize with people. But the energy that's been very present in August is that square to Saturn. And so Saturn and the square, the Jupiter-Saturn square, and even the Mars-Saturn square in August means that this has been a month that's been very structural for you. Something is taking shape and taking form, even if that's not quite obvious. Saturn is a major player in your astrology in addition to Jupiter. Jupiter rules you, but Saturn has been in your sign of home and family, roots and foundation since March of 2023. Maybe you've moved, maybe you've needed to take care of a parent, maybe you've needed to focus on starting a family, or maybe you've gotten to a serious relationship, maybe there's been changes in the household, but this has been a time, Sagittarius, to quote-unquote settle down. I know that means different things to different people. That doesn't have to be a traditional statement, but it's a time to maybe not jet off. It's time to really focus on where is home and who is home. And the things that were happening in August come to the forefront again, because in September we will have an eclipse in Pisces. So that lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 17th spotlights a space that Saturn's already been over the past 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. And so, is it 2 years? But anyway, so this is a time where family, home, your living situation, where is home and who is home, will take an additional focus in your life, pulling in that Jupiter in Gemini, which is about relationships. So it is a potentially a milestone time in your life. Of course, we're all different Sagittarius or Sagittarius risings, but it's for you to see like who's coming into your life, where do you see relationships very highlighted, where you see the home environment very highlighted, because it's the focus right now. That said, I will say the two major changes this week with Mercury, Mercury is turning direct on the 28th, and it's turning direct. Mercury is a relationship planet. It is a planet that talks about your career, so it's been a little bit more of a time to reflect instead of to act. Mercury has been in Leo, your sign of foreign travel, exploration, faith and truth and meaning. So it's also time for you to get very clear about what you believe in and what you stand for. When Mercury goes back into Virgo on the 9th of September, it just says the rest of September is go time, game time, real life time. Enjoy the sort of, take a break time right now. It might be a little bit different in the next couple of weeks. Pluto going back into Capricorn, it revisits your sign of money and income, material stability and security, and the deep psychic and evolutionary work of consciousness that you were doing over the past 15 years around money and income. Everybody has different stories around money and income, but we are all human beings and we need a roof over our head. We need some sort of resource and currency. And so even the sense of self-worth and value. Pluto going back into this space just for 2 months is the grand finale of the work that began in January of 2008 when Pluto first went into Capricorn. Pluto has been in Aquarius since January 2024, but that's the beginning of a bigger work around voice, communication, and how you think and listen and learn. So if financial themes come to the forefront, September, October, and into the beginning of November, don't be surprised, because it's really about getting you to revisit the deeper evolution and awakening of consciousness that you have made over the last 10 and 15 years. Uranus turning retrograde does make a focus on the changes in health and wellness, your body, how you live in your body, and how you show up over the past, 5-6 years. So it's just for you to sort of sit with the changes that you've made in your day-to-day life and your health and wellness since 2018 and 2019. Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is presently in Pisces. It's still in Pisces. It'll be there at least until May of 2025. It continues to be a time where you need to be very conscientious of how you think, how you listen, how you learn, how you use your voice, the choices that you make, and really taking your education seriously at this time. That's not the major focus of the astrology at the moment. The big focus actually is Pluto's return to Capricorn. Hey, you are a Capricorn or a Capricorn rising, and Pluto goes back to a space that you know very well, because Pluto first went into Capricorn in January of 2008. Go back in that, and maybe you were much younger at that time, but go back, and look, what began, especially if you're older, because typically we sort of start to notice it a bit more. Let's say if we're in our 30s or older, what began to take shape and take form at that time? What sort of bigger psychic shifts and changes began 2008, 2009? Pluto moves so slowly that the past 16 years was the time that your soul needed to do a deep evolutionary and deep psychic work of consciousness. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different soul, even if you're a Capricorn, and this is needed to transform your relationship with power, control, identity, individuality in a way that is unique to you. With the energy kind of bouncing back over to Saturn and Pisces, there may be major choices and needing to look at the power of choice throughout September and October and into the beginning of November. Uranus does turn retrograde in Taurus this week. Not as dramatic as the Pluto returning to Capricorn. I will say, before I go back to Uranus and Taurus, is that we are a month away from an eclipse. Capricorn, you will have an eclipse in your sign of career on October 2nd. Career comes in a lot of different forms. It could be literally your career. It could be the role that you play in the world, your public reputation, your public profile, your sense of duty and responsibility. So with Venus going into Libra on the 29th of August, so it'll be there throughout parts of September, you may start to see the eclipse in September. This is the last eclipse in Libra for another 8-9 years, but it has been a dynamic time that talks about home and family, because we have that eclipse on April 8th, your living situation, but also needing to grow up and needing to take on new duties and responsibilities in the world, or even to see changes in your professional life. But again, you might be seeing that in September. Uranus turning retrograde spotlights a story that's been with you since 2018, 2019. It is a space, Capricorn, you're a Capricorn. Taurus for you is something called your fifth sign. Reflect, Capricorn, reflect back to the version of who you were in 2018, 2019 versus the version, anyway, here we go. Versus the version of who you are in 2024, because Uranus talks about the need for an evolution. It's not just a need, it's a demand for an evolution, a demand for an awakening of self, and needing to break free of the things that are not you. It maybe has been a radical time of self-expression at moments over the past few years, but who are you? And Uranus is trying to get you to remember, and sometimes quite poignantly, exactly who you are. Aquarius, Saturn is your planet. I guess we're going long this time. Saturn is your planet, and it's still in Pisces, your second sign, money and income. So this continues to be a larger umbrella of time that takes you into 2025 and 6, where you need to focus on your material needs, material stability, and material security, including self-worth and value. That said, Aquarius, we do have some big movements this week. Pluto is leaving your sign. Remember, Pluto has been in Aquarius since January of 2024. There was a few months in 2023 it was in Aquarius as well. Hey, you are an Aquarius or Aquarius rising, but this is maybe this is obvious, maybe it's not obvious, but it's for you to start to become aware and to appreciate that you are in the midst of a major change of seasons in your life. I don't mean going from winter to summer or whatever, winter to spring, meaning a shift of the era, shift of the larger season of your life, and one where you're at the beginning of a need to make some major, profound changes within your life. I know it's a big statement, but Pluto is a planet that demands personal growth and evolution, and even needing to clear away the past so that new things can be built in your life. That will become more evident as we get, further 2025, 2026, and 2027 and beyond. Pluto going into Capricorn, it goes into a more hidden space into your astrology and the work since 2008 that you did on your psyche, your spirituality, the hidden parts of yourself, and to do a lot of deep inner work and even work to release things that you don't want to bring with you into the next big phase of your life. Then there's Uranus. Uranus turns retrograde on September 1st. It's turning retrograde in Taurus. Taurus is your fourth sign of home and family and roots and foundation. It's for you, Aquarius, to look back on your living situation, your household. Who were you living with? What's family? What's your relationship with family? 2018, 2019 versus how it is now. Maybe your home looks different. Maybe you've moved. Maybe everything looks outwardly the same, but what's needed to change is within. You've needed to completely feel safe and secure to come into your body, to come into this life, to accept this life, to really feel like you can make a home and make a place that is yours that might be very different than the energies that you inherited from family and even growing up. But this is a rumble of your foundation, Aquarius, and it's for you to see what are the illuminations and the awakenings that are becoming evident to you as you go into the next week. There you go. Finally, Pisces. Pisces, Jupiter is your planet. It continues to be in Gemini, your sign of home and family roots and foundation. So we've had a lot of movement in this space throughout August because Mars was there. And Mars plus Jupiter possibly could have meant that there's been changes in your living situation, whether you are thinking about a move, planning a move, have moved, or maybe there's something around somebody moving in, or changes in the household, or even like wanting to start a family, because there's a lot of Mars, but Jupiter is a big planet, and this is all bouncing off of Saturn, and Saturn is in Pisces. That's your sign. It's been in Pisces for the last year and a half. So this has been a time in your life where you've needed to take more responsibility, perhaps take more responsibility, especially with the Mars and Jupiter in the fourth, with the home, with the family. Maybe you are a parent and you now have more parental responsibilities and duties. Maybe it's about your own parents. Maybe you're not a parent, but you're also feeling the change in the seasons of life. More is being asked of you. A lot of the seeds of things in August will be revisited in September, because September 17th is when we have our first eclipse in Pisces. This will be part of a series of eclipses that will bounce back and forth between Virgo and Pisces into 2026. The last time we had eclipses in Virgo and Pisces was 2016 and 2017. I know that's a while ago, but that's just one of the last times that we've had eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. means that you're on the cusp of a very dynamic period in your life, one that activates the bigger corners of your life, family, relationships, you, career, for example. Mercury is a major player in your astrology. It is turning direct on the 28th, and Mercury is a planet that talks about your home environment, but also relationships. And if maybe anything has been unresolved or unsaid, or something about a relationship, see how things start to move and to change as you go into the rest of the week and even into the beginning of September. Mercury does get back into Virgo on September 9th, and that's where, if anything is sort of on pause, maybe you need to get into the middle of September to start to see what this sort of new era and chapter of your life is about. I will say that Pluto and Uranus, Pluto going back into Capricorn and Uranus changing direction and turning retrograde, doesn't hit your sign like it does some of the other signs. Capricorn for you is about your friends, your community, your social networks, your sense of belonging, your relationship with humanity, social issues, social causes, and to see what has been the story of Pluto and Capricorn since January of 2008. Have you needed to make some big changes in your social circle, with friendships? Needed to really assert yourself, or to clear through people who actually truly aren't friends or aren't for your greater good? Uranus turning retrograde spotlights a bigger story that's been around voice, around communication, and how you think and listen and learn. And so maybe as you go into the weekend, you might have a lot to say, especially Mercury direct, and especially going into September. So that is your look at the astrology. This one's a long one. I guess I had a lot to say, a lot to catch up on after being gone for 2 weeks. I appreciate you all. I see some familiar faces. Thank you for patiently waiting out my Italian escapades. But I'm back. It's Virgo season. There's lots to do. Here I am. But that said, this has been your look at the astrology of August 26th through September 1st, 2024. You can find me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. You can book a consultation with me. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I will see you all next week. So take care. Be well. Bye-bye.